They found out and published that 87% of this traditional training was completely forgotten within 30 days. I actually resigned. They were shocked. And my goal in life professionally was to try to figure out, why is it 20% of the people at almost every single company globally consistently sell 80% of the total sales revenue? And on the side, why is it that 20% of the people typically contribute 80% of the total, right, contribution? And so that was the single question that really motivated me to find answers. And so what I do is transformational. People seek me out from all over the world to understand the specialized knowledge that I have that I've been able to uncover, because it's an absolute game changer.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Business, Your Next Level. I'm your host, Eunicia Peret, and today I have John Pyke in the studio with me. He is an award-winning speaker, #1 international best-selling author, and a leading expert in the areas of sales, leadership, team building, hiring, employee engagement, retention, and peak performance. So everything that deals with how do you train and keep more of those individuals that maybe you brought onto the team. John has trained, assessed, and hired over 2 million people in over 100 industries. His signature program delivers unprecedented results, achieving a 48% increase in sales during the Great Recession. And those are some key and nice accolades for John. And John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. Tell us a little bit more about you and what is that secret sauce you were telling me about before we press record?
I guess it really starts when I started working for the company that founded skills-based sales training back in the 60s. And they were considered to be the absolute best of the best, right? The crown jewel, the 800-pound gorilla company that when you hire them, nobody gets fired because they're the least risk vendor. And so what I found in working with this company was a massive epiphany that changed the direction and course of my life. What I found, to my surprise, was that after the training, the high performers continue to be high performers and the low performers continue to be low performers. So there was no direct causal link between the training and an increase in sales. So I had an ethical and moral dilemma. How can I in good conscience represent a company that I know the training doesn't work? Now, you fast forward approximately 2.5 decades later, that same company that was trusted by 427 of the Fortune 500 at one point in time, right? They found out and published that 87% of this traditional training was completely forgotten within 30 days. I actually resigned. They were shocked. And my goal in life professionally was to try to figure out, why is it 20% of the people at almost every single company globally consistently sell 80% of the total sales revenue? And on the side, why is it that 20% of the people typically contribute 80% of the total, right, contribution? And so that was the single question that really motivated me to find answers. And so what I do is transformational. People seek me out from all over the world to understand the specialized knowledge that I have that I've been able to uncover, because it's an absolute game changer.
So how do you find, I guess, going back to what is talent, and how do companies find the 20% that arguably drive the 80% in just about every single situation?
Wow, that's a profound question. So I spoke at 3 acquisition conferences loaded with Fortune 1000 executives. And every single one of those conferences, they shared the same 2 top challenges, right? Number 1, faster identification of talent, because talent doesn't stay on the market very long. And secondly, compressing the time to hire or shortening the amount of time it takes, right? Because of all the bureaucracy of a lot of these larger companies. So I asked, in all 3 of these environments with hundreds of executives, what is talent? And then how do you evaluate talent? Because if talent is the be all and the end all to a company's long-term sustainability and competitive advantage, we first of all have to know how to define it and also how to measure it. Do you know that not one senior executive knew the right answer? And this is the reason why there is such a massive opportunity for entrepreneurs, senior executives to crush their competitors by implementing this. So let me give you the answer. Okay, this is based on a massive global research study. Talent is a function of the hardwiring of our brains. So simply put, there are some things that cannot be taught, some things cannot be learned, and most important, some things cannot be seen in an interview. So let me give you some examples. Persistence, drive, initiative, self-starting ability, handling rejection, resilience, problem solving, integrative ability, the ability to connect quickly and easily and build trust and rapport on an emotional level. Eunicia, these are innate, God-given talents or abilities or strengths. They are not skills, and they are not something that you can develop. So when I trained a struggling sales force, okay, they had 7 consecutive years of declining sales. 6 of their 7 competitors went out of business. This was during the Great Recession. I came in and I did my signature keynote with the content and methodology aligned with all of what I'm talking about. And in the first 30 days, they had a 48% increase in sales. It was so substantial. CBS Evening News with Katie Couric got hold of this success story. They flew a camera crew in, and in 4 days, we were on national television, kind of like applauding this huge achievement because all of the things were going in the wrong direction. The unemployment rate was continuing to go up. Consumer confidence was going down, right? So it has to do with, again, getting back to that example that I gave you when I worked for Learning International, or the old Xerox Learning Company. 87% of training is completely forgotten in 30 days. If people are not using an assessment, a comprehensive 3-dimensional assessment for hiring and also for training, you are throwing your money down the drain. Gartner has also validated the same 87% loss after 30 days. So what we know, and what I have been doing for the last 3 decades, but now the research has finally caught up. Daniel Goleman recently wrote a book called Optimal. And actually, he's one of the co-founders and pioneers of the whole emotional intelligence, right, movement. And he says in that book, almost every one of the experts agree that self-awareness is the foundation and the key to performance and to improvement. So if you don't know what you don't know, you're powerless to do anything about it. I use an assessment for all of the training that I do and all of the hiring, which is an absolute game changer. So if you don't know your own communication style, how do you expect to be able to match and mirror and identify the other person's communication style, especially when it comes to sales? So simply put, by knowing more about who you are and what you do well, you're in the best position to pick a job, a career, or a profession that's tightly aligned with what you naturally do well. Now, all of this is validated with science and research. I'm passionate about this, as you can tell. We evaluated over 200,000 people in 23 different countries, every industry, every role, from entry level all the way up to CEO, everywhere in between. We found out there was only 9% that achieved every single one of their performance objectives. The other 91% didn't achieve them. There were 2.
And generally, that 9%, they know that they're going to achieve those goals before the time actually comes because they were strategic and they had those God-given talents that you talked about. I'm very familiar with that approach.
So the 2 characteristics, and it's encouraging that they're learnable or that they are attainable, is one is what we call self-awareness or self-knowledge or self-insight. And the second one is what we call authenticity. So the more knowledge and insight we have about who we are, how we're uniquely created and gifted, and what our talents are, what our deficiencies are, what our communication style is. Here's a big one. What are we motivated by? Now, I have asked this question to thousands upon thousands of entrepreneurs and business executives, and not one person has got the right answer. What is the single greatest predictor of sales success?
What is it,
High
John?
economic motivation. Show me the money. It's not greed. It's what the money will do. Nicer vacations, looking after aging parents, sending your kids to private school. See, my MBA thesis was on motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. What's more important? Well, I found out it's a combination of the two. But what most people struggle with is when they interview somebody and then they get hired and then they start on the job, they're like, where's the person that I met in the interview? How come that person's not showing up every day? So if a person is not money motivated, they will reach a threshold of contentment much more prematurely than what either their manager or the company wants. There's nothing that you can say or do to get them to elevate, right, their motivation and drive. The second characteristic of high performance in sales is empathy, or your ability to connect and relate and build trust and rapport. Those are the two highest things. But so the biggest area of opportunity for all businesses today is to use a three-dimensional assessment. Incidentally, behavior or personality is the least important. And based on 100 years of research, they found it's only slightly better than just looking at a person's resume and making a hiring decision without even meeting them. The second is, what are they motivated by, which I covered a little bit already. And third, and most important, Harvard Business Review published a study that said that 92% of the predictive correlation between high performance on the job has to do with our cognitive ability or our innate talent. 92%. So if you're not using this psychometric tool that's been proven with over 30 different validation studies and tens of thousands of people, you are at a massive disadvantage. You're just throwing darts. You have absolutely no idea.
You're right. Personality, a lot of companies actually, they do the whole personality test and this and that, and do you do this test and do you do the other test? And the reality is that most of them just look at the part of the person. They don't really look at what are the motivators. How do you build that self-insight? How do you build that? I love the fact that you talked about the awareness and what are they motivated by? Because if are they motivated by fear, or are they going away? Are they going towards something? That is something that we see even with individuals, with prospect clients. Whenever we talk to them, oftentimes many of them are acting or are seeking to make changes from a place of fear, or they're seeking to make changes from a place of it's something that's going to be impacting their family. And the reality is it should be neither. It's truly I look at it as, what are the things that are keeping that person up at night? And what we've seen is that the moment we're able to address those, the wealth actually compounds significantly, because not only do we have the right strategies, which is great, they're needed, it's the individual's ability to resonate with what actually feels good, what gives them that peace of mind and that sprint in their step to know that, hey, this is working for me. Like, it resonates with who they are.
Let's actually put this in business terms, in terms of more research. When you onboard someone in a manner that says, Eunicia, here's your communication style, right? I understand how to best interact with you. So if you're a real high urgency type of person, it's be good, be quick, and be gone. Don't tell you how to build the watch, tell you what time it is. And if you have any other questions, you're going to ask me. That's just one example of many, right? The second area is, why do you show up to work every day? What is it that fulfills and motivates you? What do you value? Now, I have saved companies hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars by assessing their current staff, because this assessment, one of the things that's actually another thing that's very unique, it will tell us if someone is going to leave the company very soon, if someone is a flight risk. And so 99% of the time, their 2 or 3 highest motivators are not being satisfied or fulfilled. Okay. Now, let me give you a practical example. I placed a senior executive at a massive water utility. And the first 3 months, my first 3-month check-in, they were like, John, where did you find this guy? This guy is amazing. This guy is incredible. And then I did my next check-in 6 months from then, and the story had completely changed. And they were like, we can't figure it out, right? This guy has, as great as he was in the first 3 months, he's absolutely horrible in the next 3. Okay. So I said, well, let me call him and have a conversation. So of course I know his communication style. I know what he's motivated by, I know all his talents and so forth. So one of the first questions I said, what has changed, right, in the second 3 months from the first 3 months? He says, well, I have a new leader now. And I said, oh, is that right? And he said, yes. And he said, John, on a break, I go to the parking lot and I look at the amount of gas that's in my tank. And I wonder to myself, how far will that amount of fuel take me from this company? Because the thing that this guy was motivated by the most was autonomy, freedom, independence, the ability to work in a self-directed manner and to not have somebody micromanage him. This guy was looking down his shoulder and his back, telling him what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And that was equivalent to, nails on a chalkboard for him, to the point where it absolutely sabotaged his performance, his engagement, his fulfillment, and he wanted to leave, and they're scratching their head wondering why this guy is no longer performing. So the vast majority of the time when someone comes back as being a flight risk, not only are we able to preempt it by having a proactive conversation, by asking questions that are aligned with the person's motivation and drive, we're able to identify where the disconnect is.
How do you reverse do you reverse engineer that broken traditional interview process, John? Because a lot of companies are out there and they've done the same thing. It's kind of work. They don't know the difference. It's hard to implement a new process. In some cases, they might look at it as costly. How can a business owner think differently? As you know, I'm all about how do we think about this differently? Because that being able to think differently will put hardcore money into your bottom line. And yet individuals are having a hard time grappling their heads around doing something different than they've already always done. How do we reverse engineer that process?
Wow. This is a compelling, unique differentiation where you become the employer of choice because talent, right? It's very, very competitive today. So think back to the last time that you were in a position with a company and you were being interviewed. I can almost guarantee you that they pepper you with about 50 minutes straight of questions. And then at the end, they say, hey, Eunicia, with the last 5 or 10 minutes that we have remaining, what questions do you have? Well, that is not only broken and isn't working, and most corporations still continue to use that outdated method, right? It's offensive. So you think about all the preparation that a candidate goes through, they get dressed, they drive there, etc., and then they leave and they have absolutely no idea where they stand typically or what the next steps are. So because we have this advanced analytics, we tell the person in advance before they show up so that we eliminate ghosting almost entirely. Look, we're not going to go through the same typical traditional offensive interview process that you're going to experience with almost every other potential employer. After I ask you a few questions, we're going to give the floor to you because we know where you work is the single greatest contributor to any individual's self-worth and self-esteem. And it's the best waking hours of your day.
Absolutely.
So we're going to give you the floor. We're going to answer all the questions that you have. And then, when you're finished, we have some questions that we want to ask you. We want to collaborate and determine if this is a win-win. But here's the key. You're able to do this because you tell the candidate, say, for example, it's sales. You tell the person before they even show up, it's not a matter of if you're going to be successful working with us. It's a matter of how successful you're going to be. You scored in the top 5% of the highest performing salespeople globally. We can't wait to meet you. The competitive advantage of having these optics and these analytics is so unbelievably profound. And then as the potential hiring manager, I know exactly what they're motivated by, exactly what their communication style is, exactly what their talents are. And I'm able to align and build an emotional connection unlike any other. They wouldn't dream of wanting to work anywhere else as long as it's a good fit.
How do you see that test and the approach that you take translating to the younger generations that, a lot of individuals are bashing on the youngs? Reality is we have kids and we have to provide the support for them to be the next leaders, the next generation of people that will do the hard things. And yet at the same time, oftentimes they know how they're being viewed. They know how they're being perceived. And many of them have just almost thrown in a towel. How can we focus on building the next generation of leaders from your standpoint?
Let me provide you with an example. My son plays Division I college basketball, and I took them through this process of using the assessment to elevate their self-understanding and self-awareness of not only their own style, but their staff and the coaches, so that we built unmatched relationships quickly and easily. It resulted in them tripling their conference wins and having their most successful season in the school's history. Because you're bringing together people from multiple countries, cultures, languages, races. And not only that, then you're trying to have people who are 30, 40, 50, 60 years of age that aren't exactly dialed and in touch with this younger generation. So the answer is to start at a younger age and having people access this profound set of tools so that we can elevate their awareness and their understanding so they can become more authentic, so they can then pick a job, a career that's really right in the sweet spot of what they do best. Because that is the essence. This is now something that I'm going to pursue because of what you've just said. Because I'm not tired, but if I'm working with 50-year-olds, they only have about 15 years to implement this powerful information. Imagine accessing this information as a teenager in your like early 20s, which is the age of most of these athletes. It's incredible to have a 30-year advantage before they get exposed to this type of content.
I'm sitting here giggling as you're talking, John, because we went through a similar type of assessment and I had done it for myself and I went and I deployed it with my family. And what we found out, it was kind of shocking actually, because if you would have asked me prior to doing that assessment how I might be similar or different from my husband or from each of our children, I was way off base to the point of certain personalities and certain individuals, they highly auditory digital. And so for me, when I speak with someone, I'm all there. I'm dedicated. And one of the things that where I know that like it goes sideways is when I talk to someone and they're kind of listening, but they're looking at something else and they're talking, but they're not really there. That's a huge turnoff
Sure.
for me, right? So now working with our children, one of the things with our daughter, she's very different from me. And it was even just the other day, we're talking and I can see her face is towards me. Her eyes are somewhere totally different. It's like she's in her own little world. And I called her attention. She said, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I promise you I'm here. I just need a break to think. So her break was not being there. My break is like sucking it all up, being right there in the moment. Other people's breaks is I need a place to go. They need a place to go. And so being able to understand each other's differences, whether it's with the family or the team, and especially with the younger generation, you're right. It is really powerful. And it gives them an opportunity to understand that, listen, while everybody else might be bashing, there is hope. That hope, though, comes with the right tools and the right perspectives and sometimes the right mentors to help them see the things that they can't quite see themselves just yet.
It just reminds me today more than ever, people want to be seen, heard, understood, and valued. With all of the so-called advances with technology and AI this and AI that, it gets down to, at the end of the day, the quality of the connection, the quality of the relationship, whether or not there's psychological safety, whether or not there's mutual respect, which means you're going to have authentic and open communication. And so those companies that are intentional about mastering the human dimension and relationships, we know, for example, the single greatest reason why someone leaves a company is the manager, their immediate leader. The statistics are unreal. It's like something like 50%, and then another 30% wish they could leave, but don't have the ability to do so, right? So, and there was some other research that was recently published. They were saying that the contribution of someone that feels like they're trusted on the job, they produce 8 times more revenue for the company, over $800,000 worth of revenue compared to a low trust environment when you're on a team where there's not a whole lot of trust. And so one of the things that I taught this Division I basketball team is that the vast majority of leaders are conflict averse. Like 70% of leaders today are they want to just brush things on the carpet. They don't want to have the hard conversations. 67% of the followers that report to these people are conflict averse. So what we did is we accelerated, one of the core values became that we want to live in a feedback rich environment. So what does that look like, Eunicia? If you're the coach and you come to me and you confront me, you're giving me feedback. I taught them that feedback is the highest expression of care and love for another human being, because you're taking a risk, because our human nature is we're either going to reject, ignore, or disagree with it. And we all have history that has colored our perspective about how much we're willing to open up, how much we're willing to trust, how many times we've been stung before. So I basically taught them that feedback is the highest expression of love for another human being, and that anytime someone gave you feedback, the recipient would say, thank you for your love. So you've got these players saying to the coach, thank you for your love, and vice versa, where it was an open door policy where the players had the psychological safety and the trust in the coaching staff that they could share their mind instead of buttoning it up and letting it go, right? That's really the essence of how we were able to accelerate their performance and triple their conference wins. It was a comfortable, right? A comfortableness with and an alignment and a connection and a trust, right, that is uncommon. So the recipient or the person would say, if you're giving me the feedback, thank you for your love, which encourages you to do more of that behavior. It becomes a cultural norm, right? And then when a player would say that to the coach, would respond and say, thank you for your love. That's the first thing. Not reject, ignore, disagree, or evaluate it or be judgmental. It's to embrace it and to thank and to have gratitude, right? That you're showing interest in this other human being. And so this is just one of many high performance principles, right? And there's not a whole lot of them that can make all the difference in the world. So we took them from forming, right, as a team to storming, on having a lot of conflict, difference in personality styles, etc., difference in upbringing and values and all that kind of time, to creating norms and having an appreciation and respect and understanding from each other, to performing. And do you realize, here's the greatest opportunity. So many companies get stuck in the storming, and if they're lucky, the norming phase, and they never reach that performing level where you feel like you're in the zone and you're in your element and you are respected and you're valued and you know how what you do ties to the overall, right, benefit of the company. It doesn't have to be that difficult. It really doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
But so much of it depends on the quality of the leader. Because if you're not a good leader of yourself and don't understand yourself, you certainly can't lead others very effectively. What
would you say is, just really high level, because we have one more question I really want to get into. What would you say is the number one thing that an entrepreneur could do in their business, whether it's reflecting for self or as they're looking to hire? Obviously, it looks like the 3D assessment would be huge. If somebody says, you know what, not yet, what is the one thing that they could do, which I would be willing to argue that they're probably still going to get into I need to learn more about that. But what is one thing they could do today to figure out how do they need to change, again, whether it's themselves or the organization or people in the organization?
Just, having trained, assessed, and hired over 2 million people, self-awareness is the key to everything. And I actually moved to Greensboro, North Carolina from this best sales training company to learn from one of the co-founders of the Center for Creative Leadership. And they basically found that self-awareness is the key to everything. The reason why a lot of the executives are there is because they have blind spots, that they don't understand. Their intention might be good, noble, pure, but the effect or the impact of how they're communicating or whatever. And so that's why they have all of these psychometric tools and all these forms of evaluation, 360-degree feedback, to provide them with insight to remove these blind spots. So the creator of this one breakthrough assessment said this: stop trying to put in what God left out and instead work with what he gave you. Think about that for a moment.
Powerful.
The word education, in Latin means to bring up, to bring out, to rise forth. Our educational system should be, this is the purest and highest calling. It's about harnessing a person's inner potential that they don't know exists yet, right? So bringing it to their level of awareness. So they are then in the best position to leverage the best of who they are and what they bring to the table. But that's not what our educational system is doing. So let's think about this for a moment. When you, as a potential employer, tell the candidate more about them than they know about them. Let me give you an example. One of my clients was going to pass on a guy who had no sales experience. He was a former pastor. He had one of the best sales assessments I have ever seen out of millions. In his first year, he sold almost $20 million worth of real estate. He averaged 100 homes per year for 4 years and sold over $120 million. That's like the top 1/100th of 1% of real estate agents in the country.
I'm married to one
Awesome.
of those.
But without meeting any of these people, without talking to them, without even seeing their resume, just by using the assessment, this entrepreneur was ranked number 9 in all of America out of thousands of teams for being the 9th highest performing real estate company in this country. His agents averaged 35 homes sold per agent per year when the industry standard is 3.5. He has a 10x multiple on his performance. I'm just such a zealot on self-awareness and the importance of self-awareness. It's really the foundation for everything, for your ability to be the only logical choice. Again, when you can say to this guy who's brand new, doesn't have any industry experience, no sales experience, you have the sales DNA to be elite, to be in the top 1/10 of 1%. And when you tell people that before they even show up, you better believe you're going to eliminate a lot of the no-shows and the ghosting. So you mentioned you had another question before you wanted us to come.
I love the fact that it goes on both sides, right? It's your self-awareness as an entrepreneur, business owner, executive even, and the self-awareness on the side of the person that actually interviews, because how powerful is it when the two are connected? The final question for today is, what is your biggest failure or regret, and what did it teach you?
My biggest failure or regret, and what did it teach me? Biggest failure or regret? That's an interesting one. I'm going to have to contemplate that for a little bit. I think the biggest regret professionally is that when COVID happened, I didn't have a robust digital imprint. I didn't have any presence on social media. And I actually had COVID 3 times. And one time it took me out for about 6 months, where lethargic, no energy, no drive. And so during that time frame, most of my business was just completely word of mouth. My close rate's like 100% because the transformational breakthroughs that people would experience. I just had one of those happen today, where the guy says, John, will you please we're scheduled to talk tomorrow. And it's based on one of his peers having some transformational breakthroughs and just being a zealot on how much of a difference this makes. So I would say my biggest regret is not having a digital footprint or paying attention to it. Part of that's due to the color of my hair. I'm not as savvy when it comes to technology, but I have actually hired a fractional kind of CTO, CIO, who's going to be doing all my social media. He's about 30 years younger, and he's, just loves that stuff. He's a genius. And that kind of would be my biggest regret, because when my health took a dive, right, then so did my revenue as a result and my ability to work.
I love the fact that you mentioned that, right? Surround yourself. That's one of my big things, is surround yourself with people that can actually elevate you to the next level. Don't have to be the smartest person. I talk about that all the time. We're not jacks of all trades and masters of none. The reality is you have to always surround yourself with individuals that can support and can bolster what it is that you do. So, John, this has been amazing. Really appreciate you being here with us today. And as you're listening on this show to this episode, we want your feedback. We want you to please go and rate the episode, rate the show, and let us know what was the one big takeaway that you took from what John was able to share with us. By the way, there is a lot of wisdom, and self-awareness is one that's huge. And if you're thinking about it, yeah, of course it makes sense. I'm here to tell you that it only makes sense in the context of you actually are self-aware, not just because you're self-aware of self, but you have a criteria that you can assess that self-awareness against, because that criteria will then transcend and translate into similar criteria models for those people that you talk to. And that's where the magic happens. So without further ado, I thank you for being here with us, and we will see you on the next episode of Your Business, Your Next Level.
Thank you for joining us on Your Business, Your Next Level podcast, where it is all about helping you make more, keep more, and elevating your business to the next level. To learn more, make sure you head over to www.podcast.extelstra.com, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Again, that's podcast.extelstra.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.